conference proceedings. So, and there is also his contact information. I do hope that those people who feel slightly disappointed now do not leave right away in rage, stay with us, and in case of need, you will contact the speaker and find out what you might be missing at the moment. But it's with great pleasure that I invite our next speaker, Professor Hannah Hamis, of an independent researcher from Egypt, whose presentation is in English as foreign language teachers probing more rounds in Egypt. Well, I was really impressed with the profile of the speaker, and I can't but take a couple of minutes to introduce Hannah Hamis, well, who is an ESOL practitioner and teacher trainer. Her training and research interests mainly revolve around instructional technology, pedagogy, and assessment. Currently, she is Nile TESOL Learning Technologies Special Interest Group Coordinator in Egypt. Well, if I may refer to this history, to the story that brought you here. So Hannah graduated in Linguistics and Translation, Faculty of Arts of Alexandria University, Egypt. And her interest has particularly been focused on language learning and teaching in higher education. Hannah has managed various educational ventures in Alexandria University, the Arab Academy for Science and Technology, the American University in Cairo, Nile Egyptian Schools, and Zivali University in Egypt. And I won't mention for how many years. Well,
okay, 20 plus.
For 20 plus. Well, and Hannah's book, Communication Strategies in Problem-Free Computer-Mediated Interactions, published by Lambda Academic Publishing in 2012, features your MA thesis researching student communication strategies in computer-mediated interactions. And Hannah's also just focuses on analyzing learners' interactions through a problem-free lens, focusing on communicative success more than limitations. So a very positive approach to the issues. Hannah, the floor is yours.
Olga, thank you. You're so kind, really.
Well, thank you for providing that.
Thank you very much. Friends and colleagues, thank you very much for coming to our session today. I'm coming all the way from Egypt with, just a pilot study, just so you know, and your input and feedback would definitely help me sort of delve deeper, because I've just scratched the surface with, a study after some time of not doing proper surveys, I would say, in the field, testing perceptions, okay? Because this is all about the perceptions of Egyptian teachers, probing something that we're all experimenting with, mobile-assisted language learning. Some time ago, I experimented with computer-mediated communication. That included the traditional technology of, online communication. I was more into the part of getting the students to communicate together and looking at how they do that in a virtual environment, okay? Now, with mobile learners, with mobile students, and they are using mobile devices, they are actually mobile. We'd like to see how far we are as professionals doing the same thing. Are we testing these grounds or not when we are working? So, a quick survey. How many of us are practicing teachers in schools or universities? They can just show, a show of hands or bodies. Okay, that's what I call. So, actually practicing teachers, researchers only away from classes. Okay, and somewhere in between?
Yeah.
Okay.
Content creator.
Somewhere in between. Okay, in and out. Okay. Now, if I ask you about if you're using, mobile technology or, I would say mobile devices for professional purposes only, strictly professional purposes only, or personal purposes only, just for your personal use, on the personal level, what is it like? How many are using that for professional purposes? Taking risks with that? How? 1, 2, 3. How about just personal and not even thinking about including that? All right. We're just talking about, if you're teaching university students, adults, if you're teaching kids, how is that going to get into the equation? I mean, with young learners, somebody mentioned young learners, and it's very difficult to talk about that. Should it be like, anything goes? Should they just have the devices in their hands all the time? Or should that be restricted, kept down to a minimum, and think about other alternatives? Should we mix and match techniques? Because should we do away with textbooks and paper-based or not? These are some of the grounds I'm really looking into today. And for starters, I would like to just check your devices, what devices you're using, and operating systems. Anybody using Mac systems, Mac devices, Macintosh, Apple iPhones, and all of us? Anybody using Androids? Okay, anybody using a third system, which is Microsoft iOS? Nobody. It's not as catchy as the other two. But it seems, I'm not sure again, how many Androids do we have in the room? Androids. So yeah. The point is, you will be comparing your backgrounds and your context to our Egyptian context, seeing now, is it more Androids, is it more app or Mac, okay, or what, okay, or maybe a third system. Now, let me just walk you through the results of a survey. It's basically like mainly, objective question types plus, a few open-ended. I have the intention of taking that as the step, the next step here of, probing, doing interviews possibly, and just seeing the depth of different uses. Let's do that together. So first, it's supposed to be coded, all right? So anonymous, okay? But at this point in time, I have the data, and let's look at some demographics here. Now, basically, we teach English as a foreign language in an Egyptian context, and basically, the respondents, mainly the majority, come from that background, with a few exceptions, who happen to be teaching either online, maybe targeting other audiences from abroad, maybe Egyptian students included, but not necessarily immediately in Egypt. And as you can see, the participants of the survey, we have a mix of experience, but the majority, again, seems to be like the most experienced, 10 years plus in the field. Now, the age group of the respondents here, the teachers who I really, invited to join me in that survey, happen to be basically in the sector of 40 to 49. That's the majority, but we do have other age groups as well. Almost equally, it'd be 30 to 39, plus other people from other age groups. Now, as you can see here, mostly they are either part-time or full-time strictly. There are shades in between, but don't worry about that. It's a mix of both. Some Egyptian teachers venture into doing both part and full-time at the same time. Don't ask how, but it happens. All right. Now, this one here is about the students they teach. And look at the nice variety we have. This is our educational system. And as you can see, it's a spectrum. And it has its, I would say, diversity, but to an extreme here. Because look at the diversity level here. I mean, all these people are studying all these different areas. You have, of course, we do have the system, which is the KGs, primary, prep, secondary, university. That's fine. But look at university types. You will find public, you will find private, somewhere in between, like national, international. You will find even schools, different types, all right? So we have national schools, public schools, private schools, again, with a variety, okay, like different sectors, okay, the very posh, the semi, okay, private, and so on and so forth, plus those who do teaching in adult centers, like, I would say, like, teaching adult learners, and so on and so forth. So the majority of the respondents seem to come from university, and that should reflect here. Now they're working with, age groups that are, old enough to be responsible, not necessarily KGs. Now, as you can see here, now here is what I've been referring to as our educational system: public Arabic, national private, experimental, privately owned, American diploma, IGCSE, national universities private centers, US private centers, and this and that. Some startup, I can't place it. Mind you, some of the data here needs cleaning in the sense of I need to put it together. This is raw in its raw form, so I would just place them all like other, okay, areas that don't belong to the main. But anyways, you can see here the majority come from national universities that could be like, or national schools and experimental schools, national universities. Now, here is the survey, and my first question here was, when did people started using a smartphone? I mean, we had access to the internet, but the idea of owning a smartphone and getting it to work, all right, either on the personal level or for professional purposes, is somehow recent. I had a certain assumption, but I seem to have had a challenge. I thought that not so many people started using it before 2012. It seems like there were, okay, as you can see here, the majority, okay, of the respondents seem to have started using that. I may have started using the smart mobile phones, okay, like Androids and, I would say Mac-based kind of systems later on, a little bit, iPads and so on. But anyways, you can see here the variety. And operating systems, look at that. Now we have here a bias here toward Androids. And because it's as simple as that, it's open source and free. There are the select few who use Mac. There is the Windows, and again, I would just combine all this iOS to MS, Microsoft Windows, which is the third system, but again, it's not as popular, all right? It's just a small sector. Now, I just asked them about their, their regular habits using cell phones. Weekdays and, weekends. So, it seems like on weekdays, we have an average of 3 to 5, all right? Which goes up, higher, okay? As you can see here, weekends and holidays, it seems to get like, higher and higher. We have a variety, but I see like very few people just sticking to 1 hour. This can tell you here now how much time we're spending online, being away from, books and hard copies and, social life and, face-to-face communication, turning our work into, that virtual world. So here you go. How about the different apps? I just chose a variety of apps, like, I would say like 20 different apps. But here I've selected here the ones that seem to have like, the top on the top list here of top 10 most used apps. One of which seems to be most popular, WhatsApp. And it's used in very creative ways. It's not just like traditionally like communication, like, Skype, I'm making phone calls. Now it's turning into a whole system of like creating groups. You're simply creating groups, you're doing archiving, you can conduct, meetings on WhatsApp, what they call quasi-synchronous, meaning not immediate, not like real time, however, just a little bit in a step forward from real time. So I can have like a group of 4 people communicating together and listening to each other's recorded messages, playing back. going back and responding in text, a very interesting kind of phenomenon. Some groups are working on using groups for various themes, for various classes, just to collect materials, keep them handy, okay, just for preparation work. So they don't really take too much time spent around finding the resources. It's already there if it's all grouped in one place. Now, as you can see here, here are more apps that seem to be quite popular. Facebook seems to take over, as a matter of fact. I would say it goes next, right number 2 after WhatsApp. It's so popular in Egypt, it's used in so many, for so many purposes, personal and otherwise. Professional purposes, now it's catching really, especially people doing live streaming and doing groups for professional purposes, for teaching purposes, and so on and so forth. As you can see, browsing, using email clients, messenger, maps, all these are web-based. However, the idea here was to ask people, now, are you using these apps, all right, on your cell phone more than, more often than not, or are you just, away from that? I've asked about so many other apps, some of which were educational as well, okay? Things, if you hear about Baki, Educator, Socrative, and so on and so forth. Gaming, question types, this, that, and the other. In addition to those, they were not so popular yet, although a few people showed some, semblance of use, that they are experimenting with those. And I'll be asking you in a minute. Now, I've asked people to decide on their level of comfort using, different apps on cell phones. Remember, we said mostly there are things that are web-based, and you can simply use a desktop or a laptop for that purpose. Why would you use a mobile phone or, a cell phone or a gadget here, like a device, instead of a desktop? Or is it more convenient or not? And it seems like on a scale from 1 to 4, I would say, because there is a 4, now it seems like Facebook checking and posting seems to be all right, to be quite catching up, all right? It's fine now, and it's done more often than not here on cell phones, more than on, spending time doing that on desktops or, I would say, laptops. Email checking, but not necessarily email authoring. There is a difference here in the percentages. Authoring takes more time. Not everyone is comfortable writing up an email proper on a cell phone yet. It's a matter of typing, feeling okay, phrasing, and so on. Still, not everyone is doing that. Now, look at other, things like Messenger. There is Messenger chatting, okay, and of course Messenger checking. And there is that feature in common between Messenger, WhatsApp, and Viber. Those are multimodal in communication, and they can create, chats plus other things involved. Like you can mix and match text with audio, with video, with pictures if you like, and create activities around that if you like. Now, again, WhatsApp seems to be quite popular. People are comfortable using it. Now, another question here is about, the kind of interaction here. Now, if people are convenient here to use, for example, exchange a list of web links. If you have that task, you need to exchange web links with a group. Would you rather do it on over email, CCing everyone in the group, or would you use a closed Facebook group? Would you use private Messenger, or would you use a private WhatsApp group? All right, these are different choices we make, right? Private versus public, maybe using email clients versus this or that or the other. And it seems like people are okay, as you can see here, doing exchanges of web links, especially when it's a team. Using, can you just spot that? Which app out of these? Private? WhatsApp. Same with a team project.
Same with a team project. What if we're communicating, if we're dividing people into teams, especially work teams, think about that, and especially adult learners, all right, young adults if you like. Can you get them to work over teams here, where it's closed groups and they do kind of communications and task completion over that tool or not? If they're preparing for a group presentation, would that work for them over a closed WhatsApp group? Would that be faster? Would there be misunderstanding? Would it be more efficient or less efficient? Would people use emails equally like WhatsApp for both tasks or not? Okay, it seems like team projects may not necessarily work best here over emails or as equally as when you're doing, instant kind of communication over WhatsApp. Emails need more cognitive effort, phrasing and, editing and so on, text-based mostly. And to decipher messages, sometimes part of the message goes away. People talking about communication over or strategies over email would realize that. How about the language components, what we call language components, or the building blocks that we teach in class, in English classes? All right? Basically, we're referring to these components, the grammar part, vocabulary, pronunciation, or spelling. So, personally speaking, do you tend to use apps, all right, to teach these components in your classes? Yes or no? Not necessarily. All right, maybe it's not your area necessarily, okay, but would you, if you had the chance and you're teaching language, okay, and to different, for accuracy purposes, you want to enhance their accuracy, your students' accuracy, how far would that work? It seems people are okay, especially with vocabulary. People experimenting into vocabulary seems to be like the most popular. And it's not so bad. I did myself explore different apps, and if you like, we can exchange that later. Apps that could feed into the other skills. Sometimes they sort of integrate the components, so not necessarily separate training on just vocabulary. It could actually be vocabulary together with pronunciation, together with spelling, together with this and that. So sometimes you have these powerful apps. Now, how about the macro skills, the primary skills, the 4 skills? And we have them in order: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Do you happen to experiment with them in your classes using apps? Yes or no? Not really. Huh? Nobody has tried that? Yes, please. What's your experience?
Well, I do because I teach middle school. So sometimes I enter web agenda, English agenda, and I don't teach grammar because they have practice online. So we immediately have feedback, which is amazing for them. When I have listening, I can put simple text, and they write the short text after that word. So yeah, it works and they enjoy it.
It is
It's fun
enjoyable.
for English class.
Is it mobile based on an iPad or maybe a cell phone or
Usually on the computer.
desktop? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not using that. It's
And
computer.
whiteboard and,
Yeah, computer-assisted language learning could be, or whiteboard even without technology.
assignments I do for intercultural projects.
Very nice.
Yeah. And each of them has a certain, when they are grouped, a certain assignment. So I go over the class and just have a look.
Nice.
And they are focused on their tasks.
Very nice. Point is, you can do a lot of that using mobile apps and games. There are plenty out there, okay? Listening input, reading input, and giving them opportunities for producing output. Now, the nice thing is, how does it really give them opportunities for output, speaking and writing? They can write, they can speak. Is there any component of feedback embedded? That's the question. Interestingly, I've managed to capture just, bits and pieces of that. All right, so you can receive feedback as a learner on the level of accuracy from a computer. So a computer program can provide that minimum level, and it's a free program. I mean, there are more sophisticated programs, artificial intelligence programs that provide more sophisticated stuff. And of course, you can have different techniques for feedback, like involving peers, okay, and involving teacher class and and this and that, okay? So not necessarily you doing all the checking and giving feedback over the productive, okay, skills. So anyways, it seems like very popular in the area of listening and reading, and not as popular in the productive skills. Now, it's about being, working alone or in groups. These are preferences. But again, preferences including technology, all right? So would you prefer to work on your own or in groups? Especially when, let's do this comparison. Now, when we're dealing with the building blocks, the minor language components, all right? Again, the grammar, vocabulary, etc. Would you like to do the training with a, mobile gadget, okay, on your own? Or would you like to do that in a gaming kind of fashion, maybe, or sitting with partners, all right? Maybe pairs or maybe groups. Mind you, if it's games, sometimes you can have a group game, and they can compete over these language components. So personally speaking, do you have any preferences here? Would you perceive yourself, because these are just perceptions, all right? Remember, just that group of teachers over there experimenting, and they feel okay, doing okay, work okay, like individual kind of tasks or assignments, assigning students to individual work on the level of training of, accuracy-based training. More than, okay, they do both, but it seems to be more. It seems to reverse when it's the level of macro skills, the primary skills. It's not exactly the same. When we're doing task-based learning, when we're integrating skills, all right, seems like groups works better, all right? It's more fun. I mean, doing language learning on your own is not necessarily the best of things. Language is all about communication, right? So we need to communicate to a target audience. Probably that's why it's better to create groups where they may listen on their own, all right, but respond together either in speaking or writing as a group, so they can receive some feedback from some audience. And here are some comments here about the previous points. And I'll give you just a moment to skim through here and just find some interesting bits and pieces of what people think around Egypt here using these apps. It's about how they are designed and assessed, if there are problems, all right, and so on. Elder learners versus younger ones, group or individual. It is smart or not to work with cell phones or mobile learning, mobile-assisted language learning. Should we have a native speaker or what? All right, so how can we be interactive? All these are things that our teachers here are trying to, mull over and think about. So it seems like they are just considering here, it depends on the person's level and mood for elder learners to acquire and practice new language knowledge, whether to be in a group or individual. All right, that's how they perceive, especially university learners, right? Now look at that. Whether people agree or disagree to certain things, like now we need separate language components and primary skills, accuracy-based practice, all right? So what is it that we think here? Do we agree that there should be training on separate language components and primary skills on the level of accuracy-based, all right? Seems like the majority here seem to agree. Now, seems again, the idea of integration and contextualized interactions, again, seems to be, there is that agreement, but not as much as the level of separate and individual kind of like training on the building blocks, the small building blocks. This one here, the integrated communication kind of broad picture here, it's a little bit too challenging for teachers, especially at this point in time. You need to design proper tasks to get this going, to be interactive, to give them context and provide training that is fluency-based more than just accuracy-based. That trade-off, it's not an easy kind of thing. Now, things about games and apps that could enhance language learning and teaching. Now, how often do our teachers use that? The 49% say, like half the group say sometimes. And it's followed by rarely, all right? That's the second largest here. A few say quite often or never ever, all right? So it seems like it's going on, but still in early stages here. Now, what are the mobile apps or gaming kind of apps that are available out there for our teachers to explore? Here is a nice selection based on the input the respondents in this survey have given. And as you can see here, you have, somebody mentioned the QR codes for scavenger hunts and treasure hunts, you know, discovery learning. Somebody mentioned something to do with spelling, you know, Kahoot, Socrative, and so on and so forth for, you know, creating gamification questions, okay, creating questions, answering questions, competitions, and so on. Things related to test training, like IELTS training, for example. People have experimented with language software, the commercial stuff. Rosetta Stone and Babylon, I believe they are commercial more than, I don't think they exist here for free. Other apps have, you know, their free versions. There seems to be Voice of America, British Council apps. They are quite popular, seems to be. And so on and so forth. Of course, there is the YouTube as a resource. Duolingo, some people are experimenting, although here we have some disagreement whether it's functional or not. But yeah, I mean, all pieces, of software, any app needs to be tested out on the ground, and it depends. It can fly with a certain group. It can maybe not. Can flunk with another group. And of course, you have to really compensate for any app that is not, working perfectly for you or just disregard it completely. Here is something about, the modes, all right? What kind of modes do we have in terms of interactions, all right? Mobile-based interactions, we have email, Facebook, Messenger, WhatsApp, etc. Okay, so there is a general trend here. Do I create one-on-one interactions? Mostly with my students. Is it one-on-one, teacher-student, one-on-one? Or one-to-many, meaning I send out one message to all as a group or a bulk, or many-to-many, meaning having a group interacting together. Okay, so these are the three different modes. The one in the middle, which is one-to-many, seems to be the most popular at this point in time. All right, followed by the one-on-one, which is interesting. I mean, to find, that group of people really doing one-on-ones, it's really interesting. It's more like a tutoring, coaching kind of fashion. Things about interaction here, senders, recipients, all right? Is it too mechanical?